On a cold Christmas Eve, snow fell softly over the small frontier town of Pine Hollow. The wind whispered against the wooden walls of the humble cabins, and the scent of evergreen trees mixed with the smell of wood smoke from chimneys. In this bleak and isolated place lived a young woman named Abigail, a mail-order bride who had traveled far from her home, hoping for a new life filled with love and warmth. Abigail had arrived in Pine Hollow only weeks earlier, with a worn leather bag and a heart full of hope. Her husband, Jeremiah, was a silent man, tall, rugged, and weathered by years on the frontier. He had paid the fare to bring her west, but since her arrival he had barely spoken to her beyond necessary greetings. The townspeople whispered about him, that he was distant, harsh, and impossible to please. Abigail tried to smile through her unease each day, dreaming that one day Jeremiah's icy exterior might melt and reveal a kind heart underneath. As Christmas Eve approached, Abigail worked hard around the cabin, lighting fires, sweeping the floor, chopping wood, and fetching water from the frozen well. Despite her efforts, the cold seemed to settle into every corner of the small home. There was no supper on the table that evening, the cupboard was nearly empty, and all they had were a few stale crackers and a bit of dried meat. It was a far cry from the festive, bountiful holiday meals Abigail had once imagined when she first agreed to come west. Standing by the window, Abby watched as the townspeople gathered in the square for the Christmas Eve celebration. Their laughter and songs echoed faintly through the frosty air. She felt a pang of loneliness as she clutched her thin shawl closer around her shoulders. Just then, Jeremiah entered the room with heavy steps, his broad shoulders covered in snow. Without a word, he put a small bundle on the table. Abigail looked up in surprise. Inside was a loaf of fresh bread, wrapped in brown paper, and beside it, 2 slices of smoked ham and a small wedge of cheese. For a moment, Abigail could only stare, her eyes wide with disbelief. "I went into town," Jeremiah said quietly, his voice rough but sincere. "They had extra at the general store. Figured we could share supper tonight." Abigail's eyes brimmed with tears, not of sadness, but of gratitude. She had expected only cold silence from Jeremiah, but here he was, finally showing kindness in his own simple way. They sat together at the small wooden table and shared the humble meal, the warmth from the bread and meat feeling richer than any feast she had ever known. That Christmas Eve, Abigail realized that even in the most difficult and lonely circumstances, small acts of compassion could spark hope and connection. As the wind howled outside, the two shared a quiet moment of togetherness. And for the first time, Jeremiah looked at Abigail not as a stranger, but as someone he truly cared for, even if he had never known how to say it out loud. If you want, I can also turn this into a shorter summary or a video-style description for YouTube. Smile.